So good evening. It's Thursday, April 4th, 2024. Welcome to Voice of the Service. This is Sue Peterson from Michigan, where it's still cold, cold. It snowed today. I know that some of my friends had more snow than we did, but it's still cold outside. We just had a interesting, I will say, interesting discussion about the fact that the eclipse is next week on Monday, and how many communities and towns are actually shutting down schools. And here in Michigan, we're supposed to get 95% total eclipse. I'm going to head down to Indianapolis for a couple days and see if we can get down there, get of course the total eclipse down there. So it'll be a great experience. So today I just wanted to give everyone, I have posted in the chat earlier and I'll post it again, the link to the bylaws amendments. And if you want to pull them up on your own computer, you can, but or if you need it for later, you have that. But I want to make sure that we let everyone know that's what we're going to cover tonight. I am going to pull up the summary that Kiwanis International sent out, because the other document is, I believe, 41 pages long. And I figured that instead of trying to put it all on a PowerPoint and go from there, I would just pull up that summary. So I have several board members on with us tonight, Dennis and Gary and Jackie Sue and Dan. Did I miss anybody? Board members, yell out if I missed you. So good. Okay, so I will share my screen so that we can kind of go through these. What I'm kind of looking for is just to get some see if there's questions about them, or people have, are looking for more information. I have asked Diana O'Brien to come on, who's our governance specialist from Kiwanis International, and she will be coming on. We're just finalizing a date to talk a little bit more about how the bylaws amendment proposals will work, because I know that you have seen them, that there are originally 11 proposals, but one was withdrawn. So I will go through and introduce the proposal for you, talk about it, know what we have there, and then if you have questions, if you would put them in the chat. So I will also have that as a guide for when the recording comes back. I'll know what questions I need to send either back to the board or back to the executive director, or allow Diana to help us answer at a later date. So, but I thought that since this information is out, we might as well, I know people have started talking about it, and we've been talking about the dues increases proposals for the last several months. Actually, I think we started talking about it in October. So as we get closer, we now have the language for these proposals. And if I remember correctly, actually, if one of the board members can look up for me what the date is that we're voting on, what the date of the House of Delegates is.
July
And
6th.
July 6th. Okay, thank you. So just to give you that information. So, okay, so our first proposal, and I'm just going to leave it open. So if you have questions, just ask, or if our board members have anything specific they want to say. But I know that the proposal will be taken in the order that they're presented. So we will start with Amendment 1, and then go to Amendment 2, and then go to Amendment 3, and then go to Amendment 4. And I think that may, when you see that there are several proposals that if you've looked at them, there are several proposals that are related to dues. We may have to help answer some questions there. So the first dues proposal has been presented by the Board of Trustees, and you'll see on the summary. Now, of course, this is not the full 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-page document that has the full all the information in there. But this is Amendment 1, is a one-time increase proposed by the International Board to increase Kiwanis International dues to US 77, US 50, and US 34 respectively for each of the tiers that are shown below. And as you know, we have different tiers of operations for Kiwanis. Tier A countries are countries with per capita income of US $10,000 or more. Tier B countries have capita income of US $5,000 to $5,000 to $9,999. And then Tier C countries have per capita income of $4,999 or less. So those are the current dues as they exist today, the tiers. And then this is the proposal that has been put forward by the board. I know last year there was different numbers. I believe it was $30 that was put forward. So this is the proposal that the board has. And if there anybody from the board that would like to make any comments, I welcome them at this time.
I'll say something, Sue.
Perfect. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, so real quick, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. The numbers are what the numbers are. Tier A is $25 and then so on and so forth. And the board voted unanimously to support this. And we feel for a variety of reasons that it's the right thing to do. Obviously, last year we proposed $30 and that didn't make it. I would just say that if you want to hear more about the discussion, I know that recently an email went out to a lot of people, and I think it's probably on the KI website, the Lunch with a Leader that was done by President Katrina and President-elect Kwon Young and Vice President Michael Mulhall. So they explained the board side of it. And then I know that after our upcoming board meeting in Indianapolis, which is, I think, on the 20th of April, there's going to be the debut of the Lunch with the Leader of the three Kiwanis vice presidential candidates, Gary Graham, Hope Marks, and myself, explaining the board's view on that. So I would encourage you to look for those webcasts that really lay out the board's position on exactly why we think this is the right approach and the right thing to do.
Thank you, Dan. And there's also a Voices of Service recording that was done in early October with past International President Burt West that is out there, and I will make sure that we get that link out again with information that he gave to us back in October. So there's a lot of information out there. And then, of course, if anyone has any other questions, we can we may be able to answer them now if you will give a few minutes of time if anybody would like to ask any questions. We just need you to unmute yourself and talk, because I will not be able to see.
We have had questions as to why did we ask $30 last year and came back with 25 this year. We went back and did some real hard budgeting and real sharp pencils, and were able to decrease a lot of things that we feel that would warrant us to do $25 instead of 30. Obviously, it's what we can get the delegates to agree to for Kiwanis, but we feel that the $25 would be a little bit more palatable and more acceptable to the delegates.
If I could jump in too, this is Dennis. I mean, there's been some literature put out by Kiwanis. It went to all the club secretaries last week, and also the governors have it, that does have some numbers that people like to crunch numbers and see where the expenses have gone, see where the cuts have been, see why we really need this increase. And this increase will really add services to our membership and will help the clubs individually, even though a lot of the members themselves don't see it. The officers of the clubs do. They can see what's been missing because of some of the cuts in service. But I think it's, again, there's a lot of stuff out there that can answer a lot of the questions, including that 42-page document.
And there also some of that documentation that came out, I know came out in time for midwinters and at the governor's conference. And I know in Michigan, since we do divisional meetings on the Saturdays and not do one big event, those were provided there as well. And I will also say that on my Facebook page, SuePeterson.com, and I will see if I can link this out for you, but I actually put together a worksheet because a lot of people had come back to me and said, well, I pay $300 a year, I pay $500 a year, why are my dues going up? And it actually breaks down the cost of current dues that you might pay to your club, or you pay to your Kiwanis International, you pay to your district, you might pay to your club, you might pay to your division, and any other dues that you have out there, to show the breakdown. And the $52 or the $34 or the $23 is the only number that will change in that unless your district is doing a dues increase, or your club, or you have other things that you added on. So that is it's actually a link off of my Facebook page, but I will make sure when I send out the acknowledgement that this video or this program is available online, I will put that link in there so that people have that document as well, so that you can change the numbers. Some people, I based it on where I'm at here at Tier A, but you could very easily change that for your own Tier B and Tier C. Okay, so at this point, the House of Delegates this information will be presented at the House as amendment number 1. Any other questions? Okay, amendment number 2. which has been submitted by the Kiwanis International Board as well. To reduce the number of tiers from 3 to 2 and adjust the amounts charged as reflected in the proposed amendment. So this would take us from tier A, B, C to tier 1 and tier 2. And you can see the chart there. It says that tier A would be 10,000 or more, and tier B or tier 1 would be 10,000 or more. Tier 2 would then be $99,999 or less, based on the prices there. The dues for tier 1 would be 77. The dues for tier 2 would be 34. So any of our board members have any comments?
I'll mention that we went to a tiered system around 2003, I believe.
Yes, 2003.
And that was hope that it would increase membership in a lot of the countries that we were trying to build Kiwanis in. However, we are the only organization that has tiered dues. And secondly, we have not seen any increases in numbers of clubs or members due to the lower amount. And then third, the tier B are only a few hundred, and having the another tier just adds costs to the finance department to keep up with all of that. So just trying to make it a little simpler, to reduce it from 3 to 2, and possibly going back to the way we were prior to 2003, but that's somewhere in the future of it all.
So as of October 1, 2023, Kiwanis had 161,977 members in tier A, 4,240 members in tier B, and 7,928 members in tier C. And if you go to the website, Kiwanis.org, with Kiwanis dues, you'll be able to see those numbers and that information there. I have a lot of people raising their hands. So let me see if I can get to those hands that are raised. Jackie Sue, saw your hand up.
So you kind of stole a little bit of my thunder, so thank you, Sue.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. Just one comment though, the tier B folks are merging into what will become tier 2, and they're going to be neutral at the same price. So we're really only talking about the tier C folks that will see an increase in their dues, and they're just over the 7,900 member mark.
Correct. I think I saw Cheryl's hand go up.
Yes, okay, so I answer my question, but so tier 1 with tier A would have a dues increase. The tier B that would be merging with tier 2 would not have an increase.
Correct.
And what was tier C would go up the $9.
Correct.
How
Or
is
$11. I'm sorry, $11.
$11? Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, $11.
Yeah.
So how is that fair, so to speak? Just because the country is at 10,000 or more doesn't mean that those members that will be interested in becoming those people that would be interested in becoming a part of Kiwanis would meet that criteria. So how is that fair is what I'm saying. I mean, if one group is going to get an increase, everybody should get an increase.
And I'm not sure that there's a way to say that it's a fairness issue. I think it's decreasing the complexity of our system, and unconfusing. I mean, there's a lot of confusion in this tier system in general, and the numbers are looked at every year. So I don't know. Does anybody on the board have a good response to that? But I will make sure I note that down. I don't know if we can really say there's a fairness issue, because it's a matter of looking at the organization in the big picture for the cost to operate. And based on the numbers, the fact that there are the 4,244 members in tier B. Anybody on the board have a comment? And that's a great, Cheryl, that's a great question. I wrote it down.
I don't think we have a simple answer. I think that in 2003, these numbers were established and they were fairly arbitrary and capricious.
Right.
And they, it was about the country, not the individuals. So that's the system that we have. There's a group of wonderful Kiwanians who are on a group called the Organizational and Operation Structure. It's a
Mhm.
committee that they look at stuff, a lot of data, go over things, trends, current data, trend data. And that group brought us a proposal to get rid of all the tiers.
Oh,
The board didn't feel like it was ready to do that. The board thought that this was a good way to go to start to make it more manageable, as Gary pointed out. And so the fairness issue, again, I think we can debate that as to, you know, what was going on there in 2003. But we just think this is a good way to move forward in trying to make it all more manageable. And I do think there are, I heard once upon a time, I think there's 30 members that are actually going from moving up.
so from tier B to tier 1.
Yeah, I think it's Mexico and Turkey, I heard, or I think.
Okay.
So it's a really low number.
And then tier C, current tier C, so where are the 7,000 people who will see the increase? And I don't have the tier C countries listed in front of me. But I'll ask one of my fellow board members to look that up and bring it back to us.
I think so. Jamaica is part of the tier C. That has to be-
Okay, Jamaica, okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, Hope's, I see Hope's on there then. Okay, perfect. So anybody else that's on the board that may know that. Okay, I saw Greg Smith's hand up, and who else?
Tony Gunn.
Greg, go ahead.
So if the dues passes in Amendment 1 and everybody in tier C votes against it, if Amendment 2 passes, they get the increase anyway.
So we won't know because we don't know who votes for, I mean, we don't know what tier anybody's in at the voting, right? Because it's all anonymous. We'll just know that we either had a yes or a no vote based on, or a for or against motion at that point. So if
Let me say that differently. If the Amendment 1 fails, then the amendment to pass, the 2 passes, then tier C would automatically get a dues increase because they would now be tier B. They'd be tier 2. Right? Even though if the Amendment 1 passed, they could still get a dues increase if Amendment 2 passes, correct? Or would Amendment 2, it stands on its own, right?
Well, so yeah, each one stands on their own. So if Amendment 1 passes, what happens in Amendment 1 will happen. If it fails, then we go to 2.
Right.
If 2 passes, then we go at what's in 2. We would have
And then-
reduced tiers
and
to 2 levels.
Tier C gets a dues increase and nobody else does.
No, we would,
No,
tier 1 will go to 77. Tier 1 and
No, if Amendment 2, wait. If
Amendment 1 fails,
yes,
we go to Amendment 2, which says that tier 1 will go to 77 and tier 2 will go to 34.
well, I thought it would say adjust the amounts charged to agree with proposed Amendment 1, but if Amendment 1 fails, there's nothing to agree with. Because the amendment failed, right?
Yeah, I think that chart should probably say TBD in it.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, because what if 1 fails and 2 passes, then we'll still only have 2 tiers, but they will be at the current tier A and tier
52 and,
C.
I'm sorry, you're right, 52 and 34.
And so
Correct.
tier
Or
C would get
52
an
and
increase.
23.
52 and 23. There
No,
won't be any
52 and
change. if the
34.
dues don't change.
Oh, 50, because the current amount for tier B is 34.
Right, they would get a reduction.
No, they'd get an increase.
No, if amendment 2 passes, there won't be a tier B. They will now
Right.
become part of tier C.
No, no. No, there
Well,
won't
the
be.
problem is that these numbers, where it says dues in that second chart,
Yes,
should say TBD.
it should
This
say
is
TBD.
assuming that Amendment 1's going to pass.
Right,
If
correct.
Amendment 1 doesn't pass, but Amendment 2 does,
Yes,
then we'll have two tiers. Tier 1 will be $52, and
Yep.
tier 2 will be $23.
correct.
Yeah, but right now tier B is $9.99 and below. And it's $34 currently. And under number 1, it says $9.99 or less. So it wouldn't stay 23 to go to 34, according to this chart. Wouldn't it?
The best way to look at this is forget the dues. We're looking at, we're going from 3 tiers to 2 tiers, and the
tiers.
dues will be adjusted based on what happens with one or the other amendments on dues increases. The dues
Okay.
numbers there is irrelevant to the proposal. The proposal is just to go from 3 tiers to 2, and then it'll be figured out later.
Yeah, they need to take out those numbers there, as Dan pointed out. We shouldn't have the 77 and
Yep.
34 there at all because we just don't know.
So this is a great thing for me to take back. This is a good review of this, right, guys? I'm gonna say right, guys, in general. I mean, because if it causes a confusion here, it'll be more confusing on the floor. Okay, Uganda is C. There are clubs that help pay dues. Tier C is Wallace and Futuna Island, Philippine Luzon, and Philippine South, India, Nepal, El Salvador, Bolivia, Grenada, Suriname. Tier B is Moldova, Macedonia, Turkey, Brazil, Guadalupe, and Jamaica. Thank you, Jackie Sue. Okay, do I have any more hands?
Yes.
Okay, go for it, because I can't see who it is. Sorry. Is that Tony or David?
Well, I've got my hand up. I'm not sure which one, but I've got a question. If Amendment 1 passes, is Amendment 2 automatically kicked out, or can Amendment 2 still go forward?
Amendment 2 will still go forward because they stand on their own. As I understand it, Amendment 2 would have to be withdrawn by the board if they decide not to propose it, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, my understanding is this is all about the tiers, and I think the table is wrong to mention the dues other than
Yes,
tier C would not have a dues increase other than other amendments. So all of those countries, the majority of them that don't pay tier A dues will have no change. And tier B, because of the very, very small size, will disappear. And to go to a 2-tier system does not preclude the future going to a 1-tier system. So even though the subcommittee talked about at great length a 1-tier system, the 2-tier system is designed to maintain the status quo for the majority of members. And those few in tier B that go up to tier A, that's just a consequence of working with majorities.
thank you. That was Tony from Australia. Okay, I think I got all the hands now. Did I get everybody? This is great discussion for us to have. I know it sounds like we're all excuse me, we're trying to figure out what we got here. Let me see if there's any more messages. I see some messages. Okay, chat.
Yes. I may have been wrong with what I said. I just saw Brian Table's message. The table says tier B is merging with tier 2. In other words, they will have a dues decrease.
Well, tier B, actually, tier B currently, if we're gonna look at that specifically, is $34. It will move into tier 2, which will stay at $34.
Only if the dues increase is approved. I'm fairly
that's-
sure, and I haven't read the fine print, but this is all about the tiers. It's nothing to do with the dues. And I
Correct.
think that
Correct.
what the previous people have said is the table is wrong. It should be TBD on the right-hand dues column.
So we need to get rid of the dollar amounts.
Yeah,
Correct.
to make this clear.
Yes.
The dollar amounts in both current and proposed, correct? Not just proposed.
Yeah, take them.
Well, the current is current.
I understand that, but they'll want to say, if the current's in there, they'll say, well, what's the new one gonna be? And
Yeah.
so just take it out and maybe that discussion won't even happen.
All right, I'm making notes. This is good. Good information. Okay, anything else on tier 2 that we can help to further explain or to help further clarify, I guess is the big question, right? We can get this information clarified and out to people, then that may help us at the House of Delegates. Okay, proposed amendment number 3. And I will state that if we don't get all these done today, I have other time on the calendar that we can add them in, and maybe we'll do a recap after we're done. And maybe we'll have to come back together. Okay, so proposed amendment number 3 is also submitted by the Kiwanis International Board. It's to reduce the number of Kiwanis International trustees from 15 to 12, with a phased implementation with elections beginning in 2025. So not this year, but are we going to Philadelphia?
Suburban.
Pittsburgh, sorry, Pittsburgh in 2025, and to be completed by the elections in 2027. The amendment will generate a cost savings of $18,750 over current year levels. This Organizational Operations and Structure Assessment Committee looked at the allocation of trustees and whether the membership of Kiwanis is still adequately represented on the board. The board also asked the committee to study whether the reduction of the overall board size was feasible. The OOSA recommended that the allocations of trustees would be adjusted as reflected in the amendment. The United States and Pacific Canada should have 7 guaranteed trustees rather than 9. The Asia Pacific region would still have 2 guaranteed seats. The European region would still have 2 guaranteed seats, and the Canada and Caribbean would have 1 guaranteed seats, and then the at-large seat would be eliminated. That seat originally was set up for candidates that were not otherwise represented on the board, but in practice it has been to serve the Asia Pacific and the European region, which are already guaranteed 2 seats. So if approved, the system would be reevaluated every 10 years. Does not propose any changes to the offices of president, president-elect, vice president, or immediate past president. And as I mentioned, it would be implemented over a 3-year period. So for the 2025-26 year, 1 trustee would be eliminated for United States and Pacific Canada. The at-large committee would be eliminated as of 26-27. So we're reducing the number of trustees from 15 to 12. Someone started with a red line. What's that mean? Help us out. Okay. Eric?
I'd like someone from the current board to explain to me how reducing the input from dues paying members on the board would be beneficial to Kiwanis.
Eric, you gotta repeat your question again.
I believe that
I
the
said-
conversation, Eric, centered on, do you need as many trustees for 160,000 members as you do for 320,000? And so in order to be efficient, given the current budgetary nature of Kiwanis at this point, we thought it was prudent to go ahead and take a look at reducing that. That's how we got to that point.
See, I don't see a good argument, and I oppose anything that reduces member input. It drives more decision to staff, and that's not the way to go.
Hmm.
But at the same time, it doesn't really change the member input per se. I mean, it reduces it from 3 by 3 bodies, but if the current trustees and officers are doing the job that they should be doing for the greater membership, there shouldn't be an issue, should there?
You could argue it that way too, but I still think that how much of a reduction would it be? You still have trustees going to conventions. You're talking about 2 in-person board meetings.
Well, you're basing that on current operations.
Right.
So it's saying that right now it would generate a cost savings of about almost $19,000. So
Are we being that petty?
great.
Anybody else?
It's awesome that our system allows our delegates to make that decision.
Right. So the
Hoorah.
delegate,
It'll be a great conversation to have in Denver.
right,
Board's trying to be prudent, trying to make changes to better reflect the membership because there aren't as many North American members. And
Right.
so the representative of North Americans on the board, this would reduce that.
right.
Obviously, the delegates can decide whether that's a good idea or not.
And that's the benefit of our system. Okay, Tony.
You muted, Tony.
You are muted, Tony, if you're talking.
Okay, I'm well muted. I'm very, very sorry. No, but it also gives the non-US a slightly greater percentage of the vote on the board to reflect our international operations. There's certainly an issue with the emerging African nations that have no representation on the board, but that would just be a case of if their membership increases in the future, it can be worked out. In coming up with these numbers, there was all sorts of permutations done on the number of members that each trustee represented, and it's pretty well balanced. So the system will work. It's in line with also many criticisms of the size of our board. People compare us to Coca-Cola and corporations like that run on a very, very small board relative to us. There's all sorts of things that have gone on in the background, but this is fundamentally a cost-saving issue and a rationalization issue, because the delegate at large, for example, has always fluctuated between Asia and Europe. It's fairly inconsequential in terms of what it's presumably designed for. Can I move on to the next?
We're going to move to
amendment?
number 4, yes.
Because the very last sentence, I think there's a very significant word missing. It does not apply to Kiwanis International Trustees, I would have thought. This amendment is all about
Correct.
districts.
That is an outstanding get, Tony. That would be correct.
Okay.
I'll
just-
go back to sleep now. Thank you.
Who proofreaded this stuff before it went out?
Probably a lot of people.
It tracks with what happened with lieutenant governors that were approved before.
Right. Right.
That
Obviously
some
not well proofed.
well, some districts who have the trustee system are having trouble getting trustees.
Right. But what his
This only addresses those who cannot find a candidate in their region
Well,
that they
Tony
can
was-
opt for another region to represent.
Tony was just pointing out that there's a typo, and
Right.
Eric's wondering who.
Oh,
read
does
this
not apply. Okay.
Because there's
Yeah.
a typo.
Yeah,
I'll
it
get
does-
that sent to KI.
Yeah.
So Amendment 4 allows a member.
That's their system. Just singing the next thing. Peaceful recess. Hold on, let me
Okay.
know that for the sing open up.
Let's see. Make sure we're got everybody muted that we can. Okay, so number 4, election of district trustees. To allow a member from outside a district region to serve as a district trustee if no one from within that region is willing to or able to serve. It was proposed and supported by the Kiwanis International Board. The preference is still to have candidates in the region, but you can go outside of that. So some districts actually have district trustees. They may have them in addition to their lieutenant governors. And I know that just as Gary had mentioned earlier with lieutenant governors, there is that opportunity now to be a lieutenant governor for outside your region or your division. And this will do the same thing with the region trustees. And would apply immediately. So basically it's giving more flexibility to the districts to accommodate the needs that they have in their district. Any other comments on that? Okay, amendment number 5 was proposed by the Pacific Northwest District Board. And just so you know, I did not invite anybody from all these districts to propose these amendments. If there are people on here that wish to speak for it, we'll give them a little bit of time, but we don't want to let that overtake everything. We want to make sure that I don't know if we'll get through all 11 at this point, but I want to make sure that people understand the amendments that are out there. And as we've corrected a couple typos, we can continue to do that. So the Pacific Northwest District Board proposed to increase the Kiwanis International dues to $82, US 53 and US 36 respectively over a 3-year period as shown in the table. So implementation would begin October 1, and I'm just reading out of the book as everyone else has, would begin for 2024-25, which would take us to 67, 44, and 30. And this the board conditionally accepts this if Amendment 1 does not pass. 25, 26 would be 77, 50, 34. 26 would be 82, 53, 36. Let's see here. Let's see. The proposer's position, the district advocates this amendment. Member retention has been improving for some districts during the past 2 administrative years, and a lump sum increase could negatively affect retention. The amendment would increase dues incrementally over 3 years, thus minimizing the impact on current members. New club openings should not be significantly impacted, and the increase would allow Kiwanis International to maintain current staff levels to provide service to clubs and districts at optimal levels. The board's position, they conditionally support this if Amendment 1 does not pass. Their comments were the amendment would see a delay in some dues revenue, generating $800,000 less over the same 3-year period. And they refer going back to Amendment 1 for the reasons for the dues proposals as being necessary and recommended.
So let me jump in. I'm sorry, Jackie, go ahead, or me?
Go ahead, whoever.
All right, just real quick, I represent, I'm a counselor for PNW, and they made this proposal predominantly on the basis of they're the ones that did the proposal last year for increments, and they felt strongly that increments was the best way to go. So that's why they went ahead and implemented. This is a change from what they proposed last year, but they felt strongly that a staggered one would be better. So that's why it's on the table.
Okay, Cheryl?
My question is, with Amendment 5 being after, well, let me say it this way. Shouldn't this amendment be up there with the other tiers so that it's not, because if you agree to tier the First Amendment or the Second Amendment, then the Third Amendment doesn't have any bearing.
This is my gut, okay, and I wasn't involved in this unless Dennis or one of the board wants to take it. For me, if you put all these dues amendments in order, I would be so confused by the time you get to number 4 that I wouldn't know what we're talking about.
If proposal 1 passes 5 and 6 will be withdrawn or go away
There you go.
because they're null and void because 1 takes precedent. That's a
Absolutely, absolutely. So if that's not presented at the same time and everybody votes towards amendment 1, then there will be no need to even have this amendment on here.
Right. But if amendment 1 fails, there are other options, and that's why 5 and 6 are on the table.
And procedurally, you can't put 3 of them on the table to vote at one time. That's not allowed under our procedures.
There you go.
I'm sorry, will that be explained at the House of Delegates that says if 1 passes, then 5 and 6 would be withdrawn? Will that be?
That's the intention. We've had a lot of discussion on this, and we got a meeting, like we've said, a board meeting the 17th through the 20th of April, and the fine tuning is still being made. But again, everything everybody's asked today is on target with the same stuff we asked in January. So we've heard you.
I would say that it's not up to the board to withdraw anybody else's amendments.
Correct.
So
Correct.
ultimately, it's up to the sponsors of the amendments, whether they pull out or not. So I don't foresee the board saying, if ours passes, they're going to pull theirs out.
Right.
They can say that, but that's not going to be the board saying that.
Correct.
You're correct. It would be coming from the chair, and they'd ask that question. But again, that's the procedure.
And the one thing this is helping me with is I am leading the 2 sessions at the International Convention on dues on the finances of Kiwanis International. So this is great information for me to have now. So these might be some bullet points that I can put into PowerPoints so that we answer those questions ahead of time, and maybe potentially something that we can distribute to people. So this has been very helpful. Okay, so Amendment 6 is Kiwanis International dues proposed by the Kiwanis Club of the Haddons, New Jersey, US, to increase the Kiwanis International dues to $100 US, 67 US, and 45 respectively over a 4-year period, then increase them by US $1 to $2 each year thereafter, as shown in the table below. And I found another typo. Chaos could be like, what? I'm like, I found another typo. All right, so now Amendment 6. So basically, this is an implementation that would take place over 4 years. And then a proposal with a $1 to $2, which board members, would that be something that would be voted by the board each year? Oh, it says commencing. Yes, it's not. The dues would increase
Automatic $2 a year.
Correct. Automatic $2 per year for tier A's and B, and $1 for your tier C.
Correct.
Correct.
So this is Lynn Punnett. Can I ask a question?
You may. I don't know if we can answer it, but you can ask it.
Okay, I'm tracking with where Cheryl was going with her question. If Amendment 1 fails, and then Amendment 2, the change in the tiers, passes, then 5 or 6 come along and one of those passes. These have ABC. Does that then overrule 2 that passed?
I would have to defer to the parliamentarian, but I believe that it does. I
So-
believe recency is the most important decision.
Right, so these would then 2, even though it passed, in the end would fail if these pass. Okay,
That's how I understand it, because you
Okay.
go with the most recent. But that's a great question, and I will find that out.
And
Thank
it could also be amended on the floor to match what the Amendment 2 intended.
So, yep.
so that should just be anticipated is all.
Yeah, we wouldn't know whether that would be up to a delegate to propose that. 2 passes, does 5 and 6 overrule? All right, great questions. Because if we can answer these ahead of time, that will be helpful, and people will have that information. Okay, I don't know if there was anybody on from the Kiwanis Club in New Jersey. All right, we'll move to number 7. Number 5, let's see, 23, 24. Number 7. Submitted by the Malaysia District Board to change the basis level for each tier with no change to the dues amounts. So they are proposing that tier A would go from 10,000 or more to 22,000 or more, and no change and stay at $52. Tier B would be from $5,999 to $21,999 with no change to 34. And tier C would be $4,999 or less to $10,999 less with no change to 23. Let's see what's in here. The district recommends that it's more equitable in today's term to adjust the current tier A threshold to 22,000 with tier C set at half of that. There are 11 countries in tier B and 8 countries in tier C whose club dues would be positively impacted by the change. So the World Bank gross national income, this is from the proposers, which are the Malaysia District Board. The gross national income, or GNI, per capita in 2001 was US $5,471. In 2022, it was US $12,804, an increase of 234%. And the value of $10,000 in 2003 is now $23,403. So all this information is, again, in the big packet. Is there anyone on from the Malaysia Board?
I believe that the financial impact of this change is about $112,000 a year to
Correct.
Kiwanis International.
Correct. So a decrease of $112,000 a year. Greg?
Yeah, there was a chat question as, do these amendments have to go in this specific order? Can it be changed? If you're, for instance, if you're saying that having all 3 dues amendments one after another would be confusing, and then you got the tier question, could you move the tier question? So you do 1 and then 3 and 4 about the trustees and all that, and then you go the dues, the other 2s, and then the tiers after that. Can you change the order of these, or is this the way it's going to be? Because things are printed. I don't know. Just I don't need an answer.
And I don't know. I'd have to go back and pull out Robert's rules. But that's a great question. I appreciate the questions because that gives us more.
Because you could avoid the tier issue if you moved it down further.
Right, and I don't know. I'm sure that our parliamentarian worked on these with our governance specialist. So I believe you have to proceed in a specific order.
I think the question Greg is asking, is it too late for the board to change the order? I mean, the board comes up with the order, and has this been printed already to the point where, or can the board still make a decision at their April board meeting to change the order? I think that's Greg's question.
And I don't know that because the other thing is it has to be presented to it has to go out so many days in advance to the delegates.
90 days in advance.
Yeah, so that may, but that's a great question to ask. You guys are giving me more work to do. Can the board change? And I will be in Indianapolis next week, so I'll be there a couple days at the beginning. I will sit down and refer this and get this information to them. I'm sure I would expect there was something behind the way they were presented, but I couldn't tell you. Because I'm reading these, I mean, I've read them, but I'm going along right with you. Okay, Amendment 8, remote voting for Kiwanis International Business. To provide, this has been proposed by the Capital District Board to provide for candidate nominations and initial review of proposed amendments and resolutions at the Kiwanis International Convention, with final voting to take place via secure remote voting. Proposed by the board effective October 21st, with implementation to be in conjunction with the 2025 convention in Pittsburgh. Expected expenses to implement remote voting would remain with current expected costs of approximately $60,000 for voting during the Kiwanis House of Delegates. The board supports the amendment. An in-house House of Delegates would still be held with remote participation as well. Voting would be conducted via a secure remote method over at least 24 hours or longer, and that would be determined. Ranked choice voting will be used for the vice president election, and the Kiwanis International Board would determine all the other details in that information. Anyone from the board or from the that's on here that has any questions, or of Capital?
Having been in Capital District when this has come forth, for those that aren't familiar, Capital District proposed that it's either 2 or 3 years and it failed. It kept getting a little better.
Right.
And then 2 years ago, Kiwanis International Board proposed it coming out of COVID and it failed. And Capital has made the proposal this year, word for what Kiwanis International proposed 2 years ago. It's very complex. It's very detailed in that 42-page full amendment packet, but it can be very confusing. This is one you're definitely going to either have to ask questions of Capital District or attend the meetings in Denver to really grasp what it all means. Because there's a lot of nuances to it, especially that, I forget the term again, that voting where I forget the term that I know New Hampshire uses it, some other states use it. So again, it's something it's still very controversial, but I think people need to look at it. The board backed it solely on the fact that it was what the board proposed 2 years ago.
And I think it's 15 pages of the 41.
Right. But don't hesitate to get in touch with Jeff Wolf, the executive director, who's the proposal, as well as the governor, any board members of Capital District, because they will explain it to you better than I can.
Correct. Tony. You're muted if you're on, Tony, because I can't see. All I see is raise your hand.
I'm muted again. Okay, one of the things that interests me is the 24-hour period in which you can remote vote. I'm one of those people that have been forced to attend an electronic convention at 2 a.m. And I did that because I care. So if I cared about a particular vote, I would get up at 2 a.m. to vote in real time. And I'm not sure that the 24 hours adds any value to this amendment. But that's just an opinion, and I won't be in Denver to talk to it. Thank you.
And I would believe that was put in there. I'm not speaking for the board, but I would believe that was put in there just for an opportunity to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to vote that wishes to vote. It's in what is their time zone. And there looks like there's okay. Let me make sure there's nothing in chat. Can we table an amendment until it makes sense? Any amendment can be tabled, correct?
From the floor, yes.
Yes. All right. Amendment 9. Proposed Amendment 9 has been proposed by the Kiwanis Club of Barrie, Ontario, Canada, to prohibit the use of any Kiwanis International revenue, including membership fees, including membership dues, fees or non-dues revenue to purchase alcohol for or by Kiwanis International board members or staff or their spouses or companions, effective October 1. The Kiwanis International Board does not support this amendment. I will read the proposer's position. In recent years, the organization has spent an estimated $7,000 to $15,000 on alcoholic beverages, most of which are offered at ticketed events at Kiwanis International Convention or at sponsored events at specific meetings. The club advocates the amendment for the following reasons. The club is not opposed to alcohol being served. Consumption is a personal choice, but it should not be paid for by donations or dues. A cash prize would be acceptable. The image to the public and the Kiwanis corporate donors is important. The board and staff cannot be seen to be frivolous with spending and then ask members to increase their dues. The board is committed to cost savings. The club believes that non-dues revenue should be applied elsewhere. The club considers that using the organization's funds for alcohol may be against the board's policy not to accept advertising of alcoholic beverages. The board's position, the existing policy on alcohol states that the purchase of alcoholic beverages for any event produced or sponsored by Kiwanis International or its entities shall be funded by non-dues revenue, including but not limited to registration fees, separate ticket sales, and or third-party sponsorship or underwriting. Policy demonstrates responsible stewardship of the organization's financial resources. Kiwanis International's largest and expensive alcoholic beverages is in conjunction with the convention. Beer, wine, and other beverages may be offered at specific events and paid from registration income or from tickets sold to attend the event. Second annual cost is from conferences or meetings held during the year, which may be provided at a reception or dinner. In such cases, the cost is underwritten by a third-party sponsor, the hotel, convention bureau, financial firm, etc. Any other purchase of alcoholic beverages during the year is paid for by third-party sponsorship or by participants themselves, i.e. a cash bar. Many purchases of alcohol beverages already comes from funds other than dues. However, this amendment would prohibit the sponsorship of meals and beverages by third parties from non-due revenues. Kiwanis International's policy regarding advertising of alcoholic products refers to official publications, not corporate sponsorship. And the proposal is United States centric, implying a moral judgment. Alcohol is commonly served and consumed in many other parts of the world for all types of functions and settings. So, any questions on that? And that one's only 2 pages, just so you know. But this has come up last several years at our convention as well. Okay,
Sue?
go ahead,
Sue,
yes.
I have my hand raised, so does Daryl. Go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, I don't see them when they don't come up. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just had a quick question regarding the last amendment. If you have the 24 hours for voting, what does that say about the amendments we're looking at right now that have all these overlapping consequences? And, you know, if you pass one and you got 24 hours, you're not going to know what happened. So you don't know what to do the next one. That has a direct impact on what you just passed.
Great question.
I'd
have to go back. I'm sorry, but I will have to go back to look things.
I just see that as having a real negative impact.
That's a great point. If we have numerous amendments like this. Okay. Thanks, Daryl. Great question. And that may be in the 15 pages that I've read once, but I need to read again. Okay, I think that was Greg.
Yeah, okay, so on the alcohol thing, I guess I'm wondering, what they're implying is that, and I want to find out if this is what happens now or not. What they're implying with this amendment is that companies or organizations, they'll give Kiwanis non-dues revenue, then Kiwanis will choose to use that for alcohol. Now, is that what happens, or is the alcohol that's donated specifically earmarked for that purpose by the organization? In other words, if the organization, if this passes and they said, no, we can't use alcohol, would the organization say, well, we're not going to give you any money because we want it to go specifically for that? What's happening now in terms of money for alcohol on a non-dues revenue standpoint?
Thank you, Greg. I'm the proposer of that amendment and the next one, and that's exactly what we're considering.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is that, because I don't, if non-dues revenue is earmarked for alcohol, I don't see a problem with that. In other words, if the organization, what you're doing is you're prohibiting that altogether, because as opposed to saying, we're going to give you $100,000, use it however you want. That seems to me there's 2 different things, and one I could understand. The other, I would not, I wouldn't understand why we couldn't, if they want to give it to us for that, why we couldn't do it for that. So that's my point.
And that will be up to the delegates, and that's exact, and I'm gonna add just some information here, as a person who does sponsorship, I often get sponsors who provide us money specifically to sponsor the cash bar. And then I will say this is non-Kiwanis. This is my other world. They will give us money specifically to sponsor a cash bar or to sponsor tickets for that type of stuff. So it's something to take into consideration, that, but it's not money that in my case is coming from a dues situation or fees. And also I know that if I buy tickets to an event that may have a cash bar, or they may give me one ticket for a drink, I'm paying for that by purchasing my ticket. Is that, anybody else on the board have anything to say? Or am I speaking from the left hand? Cheryl?
So
Cheryl, you're really breaking up. No, we can't hear you. And then we'll finish up with number 10. It's already 3 minutes after 9, so I want to be respectful of your time. Cheryl, if you want to put it in the chat, we can follow up there. Also proposed by the Kiwanis Club of Barrie, Ontario, Canada, to prohibit the use of any Kiwanis International revenue, including membership dues, fees, or non-dues revenue, to purchase first class or business class air for or by the Kiwanis International board members or staffs or their spouses or companions. When travelers book economy class airfare, Kiwanis does not request the comparable business class fare, so it is difficult to estimate the financial impact of this proposal. Permission for business class fares applies to approximately 10 trips per year, primary for the president and the spouse, for intercontinental nonstop flights of 7 hours or longer. If the difference is $1,500 per ticket, the impact may be $30,000. The proposer's position is the board is committed to reducing costs. This would result in substantial state savings. Kiwanis International should not use any dues or donated funds to add comfort for a volunteer or staff member to travel by upgrading to business or first class. They volunteered or were hired for service. The funds should go to where they belong, to serving children. The club does not want to see the image of Kiwanis International diminished in the eyes of the public as a result of VIP lounges, first class tickets, etc. Our club members and district officers pay for their spouses' travel meals out of their own pockets. The board members and staff should do the same. The board position refers to the existing policy that the authorized class of service for Kiwanis International business is any reasonable price range based upon the lowest applicable economy fare at the time of purchase, including additional fees. For any intercontinental flight segment that is scheduled to be longer than 7 hours of nonstop flying time, a premium economy fare or the equivalent, or an upgradable economy class may be authorized with the traveler using his or own resources, including frequent miles, to pay for upgrade to first or business class. However, the president and their spouse partner, the president-elect and his spouse or partner, and other officers on approval by the executive director or president may fly business class for intercontinental flights of nonstop flying longer than 7 hours. As stated, economy is the normal class of service for all board members, including the president and president-elect and spouses. Staff adhere to the state rules. Business class for international travel may be utilized only under specific conditions regarding especially long flights. First class for domestic travel is never an option unless the traveler personally pays for it. Long international flights in economy class can be grueling,
and some other people who have money.
Especially when travel is expected of the organization's foremost ambassador positions. It is not uncommon or irresponsible for a major corporation to allow reasonable exceptions for its highest leaders. Approximately 10 trips per year are included in the annual budget, and each exception is reviewed and approved on a case-by-case basis. Travelers are allowed to use their travel points to upgrade to their class of service. Self-imposed policies demonstrate responsible stewardship by the board, and the amendment would prohibit the sponsorship of airfare upgrades by third parties using non-dues revenue, even if the corporation, such as an airline or travel agency, wished to support Kiwanis in this way. That's the amendment number 10, the prohibition on purchase of airfare. Any comments from the Quantum of Barrie, Ontario, who proposed that? And any questions?
Bob Bogars, the Barrie Kiwanis Club.
Hi, Paul.
The whole thing there is that we have not seen any financial breakdown as to how much was or is or isn't spent. And I don't believe that any airlines are going to offer it to you. I've never seen a corporation get offered from an airline. But maybe I haven't been in the right corporations.
I'm sorry, can I interrupt? Can I interrupt something? Can you repeat? I guess I don't understand what you said. You've never seen airlines offer.
I've never seen an airline offer a corporate member in the corporations that I've been involved with a first class or business class ticket over and above what they're purchasing. Airlines these days are pretty tight. So it's basically how can't even say the word. How fiscally responsible are the trustees being, and are they seriously looking at the costs before they go out and ask for dues increases?
Any comments from anybody? I will tell you that, and I'm going back to when I served on the board, and served on the board for 7 years. No tickets were purchased unless they were approved by the international office for tickets for no matter where you went, for any tickets wherever you went. And I know that I personally paid for any upgrades out of my pocket or paid for use with miles to travel, probably because I do a lot of traveling, so I have that opportunity there. But I know that I believe the system that they are using, and similar to the one that I'm using in my professional life. They don't allow you to purchase them after certain. I mean, there's numbers that they put limits on. If it's a certain number, it has to go to someone else to ask it to get approval for it. So, any of the board members that want to add to that?
I can do so, Sue.
Jackie Sue, go ahead.
So we are required to go through the Qantas International approved travel agent to book all of our travel. That gets us hopefully the best price out there based on the quantity that we travel. We do have to pay for all of like the extra seat that gives us leg room or whatnot. Any upgrades have to come out of our pocket. They will only pay for the economy travel. That's it. And again, it's only if it's a very long flight and reserved hopefully for just the president, if they have to get off the plane and make a presentation right away, that any exceptions are made. They are very strict with us, and we are strict with ourselves.
Correct. I know a lot of even back in the days, a lot of people paid for that stuff out of their own pocket because they didn't want. I mean, I'm paying the same dues, and I didn't feel that it was right for me to spend that money myself either. So, and airline prices are crazy all over the place. So yeah, they're not in it for not in it for them. For others, they're in it for themselves, as we know. Like every business is, right? Their business is making money. So, all right. Well, I'm gonna stop the share here. And I'm gonna look at the comments really quick here. If the dues increases are approved, can we be assured there are no other increases? We're never assured. That's never an assurance in life. If the results are reached, can we expect future dues? I think dues in general, any kind of financial thing, there's never in my opinion, there's never a money's money, right? We're never gonna I don't know how many times we'd go backwards, but all beverages for all alcoholic beverages, you would think I was drinking, should be provided only when sponsored. That's a good point. We go through this every year. Airlines offer upgrades to check-in. That's very true. Credit card, Kiwanis credit card with miles. I know we at one time had a program. I'm not sure, I can't talk off the top of my head if that program still exists. But a lot of those programs have gone away, even in my world at the university. Companies are not, credit cards don't provide that amount of sponsorship like they used to years ago. All right, with that, I am going to make sure that I get all the comments together I have here to Kiwanis International. I will make sure I will do that tonight. Thank you for the corrections that we have found, and if you find any more, please let us know. I will let you know when we're going to have Diana O'Brien, our governance specialist from Kiwanis International, so that we can ask her some of these more detailed questions. But this is a great start for us to get these questions answered, that hopefully we can get this information back to your districts and you can get back to your memberships. So when we do get to the House of Delegates, we may be able to have answered a lot of the questions up front. We can go over that. I know there are the education schedule. I do know that there are 2 workshop sessions on Friday, July 5th from 9 to 10 a.m. about the finances. And on Thursday, the day before, there was a block at 4 o'clock. So there are sessions on Thursday and Friday for the as 2 of the sessions on the finances. And then the annual meeting is on Saturday, July 6th. So you'll have time on Thursday, Friday, and then the session will be on Saturday. And you can corner me at any time you want. So, all right. Thanks everyone for being with us tonight. We will see you next week. Have a great evening and a great week. And be careful with the eclipse. Don't look at it without some kind of protection. And sunglasses, your regular sunglasses don't work. Thank you.